The Galactic conquered was a mosaic of species, cultures, and ambitions, stretching across 1,000 star systems. In its gleaming capitals, scholars debated and politicians schemed, but few gave thought to ancient myths, especially the story of the Humari. To most, they were nothing more than bedtime stories for children, cautionary tales of a lost race long vanished from the stars. Rin Talar, a young pilot from the Yalari Dominion, never believed in myths. Duty had trained her to rely on facts and sharp reflexes, not legends. But now, drifting helpless in the void outside the wreckage of her destroyed ship, she wasn't so sure. The fleet had been surveying the border sector near the Perseid Fringe when it happened. One moment, her squadron was mapping a newly discovered asteroid cluster. The next, everything exploded into chaos. Massive energy blasts, precise and deadly, tore through their formations. There was no warning, no communication. Only silence, until Rin's ship's comm crackled to life with a distorted voice. "They're coming back," the message whispered in a voice too cold to be human, yet undeniably familiar. They were never gone. Before she could react, a blinding flash engulfed her cockpit. Rin felt herself thrown violently as systems failed one by one. The last thing she saw before the emergency eject launched her pod away was a symbol glowing fiercely on a distant hull. A handprint, blackened and scorched, unmistakably human. Floating in the cold, silent void, Rin's mind raced. Humans. The Humari. Legends. Myths. All of it felt like a dream. Until now. Back on the capital world of Luxar 4, scholar-diplomat Varric paced his office in the depths of the Concord archives. The air was thick with dust and the smell of old data crystals. His fingers traced the edge of a forbidden tome, a relic from the era when humans supposedly ruled the galaxy. Varric's obsession with the Humari made him a pariah among his peers. Yet he couldn't ignore the growing evidence. Disappearances, destroyed colonies, strange signals intercepted beyond the fringe. All pointed toward one terrifying conclusion. Humanity was not extinct. That morning, his assistant rushed in with urgent news. Another colony has gone silent near the Draconis Nebula, the mining outpost Aegis 12. Sensors detect massive heat signatures, as if the surface was burned to glass. Varric's heart sank. The reports matched Rin's experience, energy. Blasts, blackened handprints, and no survivors. He connected to the interstellar network and reviewed the last transmissions from the missing fleets. One stood out, a garbled distress call in a language no one had heard in centuries. Using an ancient cipher, Varric worked late into the night decoding the message. When the final phrase emerged on his screen, he whispered, "They're coming back." Meanwhile, across the galaxy in the Slarvathi Empire's war chambers, Admiral Gir studied the reports with grim determination. The Slarvathi, known for their martial prowess, had fought countless wars, yet the idea of the Humari sent a shiver through even their hardened ranks. "We always believed they were extinct," Gir said, eyes narrowed. "But their tactics, the precision, the silence. This is not a new enemy. This is the return of the nightmare we thought dead." Council chambers buzzed with debate. Some called for calm, dismissing the sightings as piracy or accidents. Others, like Gir, pushed for immediate mobilization. The debate grew heated, until the skies above Nebulos erupted. Suddenly, a fleet unlike any other emerged from hyperspace. Black angular ships slipped through the atmosphere without warning. The Concord flagship Aurelia scrambled fighters, but the human fleet moved with terrifying speed and coordination. A thunderous explosion rocked the command tower as a beam of dark energy tore through the flagship's defenses. Panic spread. Communications went dark. The attackers broadcast a single chilling message in a dead Terran dialect. Reclamation initiated. Rin, rescued from her pod by a passing freighter, sat silently in the med bay, haunted by memories of that day. The myths weren't myths. The Humari had returned, not as legends, but as a reckoning. And now the entire galaxy would have to face the truth. The humans they thought were dead were watching, waiting, and ready to reclaim their place among the stars. Scholar diplomat Varric stood before the vast hollow table in the archive's deepest chamber. Streams of ancient star charts, encrypted logs, and faded starship manifests flickered around him like ghostly phantoms. For months he had pursued the truth of the Humari, piecing together fragments dismissed as myth. Now those fragments were coalescing into something far more terrifying. The mining colony Aegis 12 was the latest in a growing list of lost outposts along the Draconis Nebula's edge. What alarmed Varric most were the uniform signs at every seen intense thermal signatures indicating planetary-scale burning, and that same haunting glyph, a scorched human handprint. The Concord's response had been sluggish, paralyzed by disbelief and political infighting. But Varric knew better. "We can't ignore this any longer," he said sharply to the Council's delegation visiting the archives. "There is a pattern. This is not piracy, not a natural disaster. These attacks bear the hallmark of a returning force, one our histories barely dared to mention." Councillor Hellman snorted, folding his arms. "You chase fairy tales, Varric. We have more pressing matters than the tales of some extinct species." Varric's eyes hardened. "If you wait until they reach our core worlds, it will be too late." That evening, Varric retreated to his quarters. His only solace was an ancient data crystal, rumored to contain fragments of the lost Terran archives. He inserted it into his reader. Flickering holograms projected a faded Terran star map, alongside battle logs from a war long before the Concord was formed. Among the data was a cryptic transmission labeled "Last Hope." It described a desperate human fleet fleeing from a dying Earth, scattering into exile beyond the Perseid fringe. The logs hinted at advanced quantum technology, communications using entangled particles, weapons capable of tearing space itself. Varric's fingers trembled as he played the last message. Encrypted in a language thought dead for centuries, a voice barely audible whispered, "To those who survive, remember us not as savages but as the flame that refused to die." Far beyond the archives, the Concord's listening posts along the Perseid fringe began to experience interference. Sensors detected anomalies, ships appearing and disappearing without transit signatures, gravitational waves inconsistent with known phenomena. Then, the first direct contact, a garbled distress call from the outermost colony of Delta V. The voice was human, but distorted, desperate, and urgent. Ryn Taylor, recovered but restless, now served as a liaison between military intelligence and scientific research teams. She pored over the recordings, her unease growing. "It's them," she told Varric during a briefing. "The same tactics, the same code. We're seeing history repeat itself." Meanwhile, on the Slarvathi warship Vraxis, Admiral Gir examined the fleet's readiness. The Slarvathi were legendary warriors, but they had never faced an enemy that wielded such ruthless precision. Intelligence suggested that the humans had mastered new forms of warfare, fighting not just with guns and ships, but with minds and quantum fields. Gir's communications officer interrupted. "Admiral, a ship just went dark in Sector 17. No distress signals, no debris, just vanished." Gir's jaw tightened. "This is no accident. Prepare the fleet for immediate deployment. If the humans are behind this, we fight fire with fire." As the Concord mobilized, Deep Space Scouts uncovered a haunting relic drifting near the dead star system of Callus IV, a human battleship, ancient and burned, but unmistakably Terran. Its hull was etched with the black handprint symbol, glowing faintly against the void. A team led by Varric boarded the derelict ship. Inside, they found skeleton crews, ancient logs, and a sealed chamber containing a quantum core, still alive, pulsing with cold energy. The logs revealed that this vessel had been part of the original Terran exodus, carrying survivors who vowed to return and reclaim their lost home. Varric's heart pounded as he broadcasted his findings across the Concord. "This ship proves it. Humanity never vanished. They survived somewhere." Back on Luxor 4, the political atmosphere soured. Calls for urgent action grew louder, but so did calls for diplomacy. Many feared the cost of war. Yet Rin and Varric knew that hesitation was deadly. The humans had the advantage of surprise technology and a fanatical resolve. The first signs of human activity in the fringe were no longer whispers. Entire systems vanished without a trace. Colonists reported fleeting glimpses of black ships, moving faster than light should allow. Then a chilling broadcast intercepted on all frequencies. "We are the flame that refused to die. We come not as saviors, but as reclaimers. The galaxy will remember humanity." The message repeated again and again, a spectral echo that spread like wildfire through the Concord's communication networks. Rin sat in her quarters, staring at the stars beyond her window. The galaxy had never felt so vast, so unknown, and so terrifyingly small at the same time. "They're coming," she whispered to herself, and this time, the myths were very real. The nebula system was a vital hub on the frontier of the Galactic Concord, its sprawling shipyards and refueling stations a beacon of stability amid the turbulent Perseid fringe. The Concord flagship Aurelia floated serenely in orbit, a gleaming symbol of peace and power, until the sky shattered. Commander Zir stood on the bridge reviewing reports from the outer sensor arrays. The tension was thick, but the Council's dismissal of the human threat gnawed at him. He didn't want to believe the myths were true, but the evidence was mounting. Too much for coincidence. Suddenly, alarms blared. The bridge shuddered as an unseen force slammed into the Aurelia. Energy readings spiked, weapon signatures unlike anything in the Concord arsenal. The screen flickered, revealing a shadow fleet emerging from hyperspace, ships black as void with angular hulls that absorbed light. "Enemy vessels, no transit signatures," the tactical officer shouted, eyes wide. "They're inside our sensor blind spots." Shear's voice was sharp. "Raise shields, deploy fighters, prepare to engage, identify their command ship." The Aurelia shuddered again as concentrated beams tore through its outer defenses. Fighters launched, but they were outmatched. The enemy moved with terrifying precision, ships appearing and vanishing, striking from impossible angles. From the command chair, Zir saw a strange symbol emblazoned on the lead ship's prow, a Wanoir, blackened human handprint glowing ominously. The attackers were not just human, they were the humans. Below decks, Captain Rin Taylor was scrambling to organize damage control teams. The corridors trembled under the assault, fires breaking out near the engine cores. She dodged falling debris and guided survivors to safety. "This isn't just a raid," she told her second-in-command, her voice tight with urgency. "It's a declaration. They want to cripple us before the whole Concord can respond." In the command center, a distorted transmission interrupted the chaos. The bridge fell silent as the message echoed through the ship's speakers in a dead Terran dialect, a language no one understood. Zir, struggling to find a translator, finally heard the chilling phrase repeated over and over. "Reclamation initiated. Back." On the bridge, the tactical officer grimly reported, "Shields failing in Sector 7. Hull breach imminent." Zir gritted his teeth. "Prepare to abandon the Aurelia. Evacuate command staff to escape pods." As escape pods launched into the cold void, the flagship's bridge exploded in a controlled chain reaction, a final act of defiance against the unknown enemy. Meanwhile, deep within the enemy fleet, Commander Rei Nakamura watched the battle unfold through her ship's view screens. The human armada moved like a single living organism, striking with surgical precision. Years of exile and survival had forged them into something beyond mere soldiers. Nakamura's eyes, sharp and unyielding, reflected the burning wreckage of the Aurelia. To her, this was justice, not conquest. The galaxy had written humanity off as extinct, erased them from history. "We do not seek mercy," she told her second-in-command. "Only reclamation." Her voice carried the weight of generations, of a people who had lost everything, now returning not as victims but as predators. In the aftermath, the Concord's surviving fleets scrambled to regroup. News of the Aurelia's destruction spread like wildfire, shaking the foundations of the Council. Fear took root in even the most hardened veterans. Varric received a coded message from a scout ship orbiting the nearby system of Kaldros. The transmission was brief. Black ships, silent ghosts, no survivors. The handprint spreads. Rin, now aboard a battered escort vessel, stared at the flickering comm console. "We're no longer fighting pirates," she whispered. "We're fighting a force that remembers every slight, every wound. This is personal." The council convened an emergency session on Luxar 4. Voices rose in panic and disbelief. Some called for immediate retaliation. Others urged caution, fearing full-scale war with an unknown but relentless enemy. Councillor Hellman slammed his fist on the table. "This is madness. These humans are a myth. How do we fight a ghost?" Admiral Gier's response was cold and clear. "We fight because if we don't, there will be no Concord left." That night, in the dark corridors beneath the capital, Varric sat alone, poring over the recovered logs from the destroyed Aurelia. Among the wreckage's encrypted files, he found something unexpected, an intercepted message from the human fleet encoded in a forgotten Earth dialect. It read simply, "We are the flame that refused to die. We come not to beg but to take. The stars belong to those who fight for them." The weight of those words settled heavily on Varric's shoulders. The humans were no myth. They were here, and they had declared war. Outside, as the twin moons of Luxar 4 cast pale light over the city, Rin gazed at the stars. The galaxy had just become a far more dangerous place. And somewhere out there, the handprint waited, watching, hunting, reclaiming. Commander Rei Nakamura stood on the bridge of the flagship Tsunami, her eyes scanning the endless star field through the reinforced viewport. Around her, the human armada moved with the precision of a predator stalking its prey. The black ships were sleek and angular, shadows in the void, built for speed, stealth, and devastation. The galaxy called them myths, ghosts, remnants of a long-lost race. But Rei knew the truth. Humanity was no ghost. Humanity was reborn. Earth had died long ago. Not in a single catastrophic event, but through centuries of wars, environmental collapse, and ruthless survival. The old nations crumbled, giving way to corporate oligarchies and fractured city-states. When the last global war scorched the planet, humanity faced extinction. But some had escaped. Vaults of knowledge, ships built in secret, and fleets hidden in the farthest reaches of space. They adapted, merging biology with machines, evolving through hardship and necessity. Rei's ship was more than a war vessel. It was a living fortress, its hull layered with nanotech armor capable of repairing itself in seconds. Its quantum engines bent space, allowing near-instantaneous jumps between star systems. Weapon systems used entangled particles to deliver precise strikes that could disrupt entire fleets. These advancements came at a price. Humanity's survivors were hardened, conditioned by loss and relentless conflict. The memories of Earth's fall were etched deep in every soul. Rei's second-in-command, Lieutenant Haru Masaki, approached her quietly. "Commander, the conquered forces are regrouping near the Lyra cluster. They are weak but desperate." Rei nodded, her expression unreadable. "We will strike quickly. We do not have the luxury of patience." Haru hesitated. "Commander, there is talk among the fleet. Some question the endless war. Some wonder if we should seek peace." Rei's gaze hardened. "Peace is for those who have forgotten what was taken from us. We lost everything. The galaxy wrote us off as myths, but we survived. Now it's our turn to reclaim what is ours." The command deck was filled with quiet murmurs and the hum of machinery. In the distant darkness beyond the bridge, Rei's thoughts drifted to the last broadcast from Earth before its final collapse. A weary voice had spoken. "We will return. We will not be forgotten. We will take back our place among the stars." That promise was more than hope. It was a vow. A vow carried in the heart of every human now standing ready to fight. Back on the Tsunami, Rei reviewed the latest reconnaissance images of the Concord's fleets. Their ships were impressive, but outdated, and their tactics predictable. The humans had learned from centuries of guerrilla warfare, adapting quickly and striking with devastating efficiency. The upcoming battle would be a test, not just of technology, but of willpower. The human armada had survived against impossible odds before. It would survive again. Later, in the privacy of her quarters, Ray activated a holoscreen. Images of Earth's final days flickered across the display, cities burning, desperate refugees, starships fleeing into the unknown. Among them was a young girl, no older than 10, clutching a faded flag. The girl's eyes were fierce, defiant. That girl was my mother, Ray whispered. She taught me that survival is not enough. We must reclaim. Her voice was steady, but beneath it lay a well of pain, memories no myth could capture. Meanwhile, among the human fleet, tension simmered. Not all agreed with Ray's unyielding approach. A small faction, calling themselves the Restorers, advocated for dialogue and rebuilding rather than destruction. Their leader, Captain Soren Hale, believed humanity's future lay in coexistence, not conquest. During a secret meeting aboard the cruiser Phoenix, Soren addressed his followers. We have the strength to crush the conquered, yes. But what then? Endless war will consume us all. We must show them that humanity can be more than the ghosts they feared. His words were met with a mix of hope and skepticism. The scars of millennia, of conflict ran deep. Ray's voice cut through the debate when she addressed the fleet over the comm channels. This war is not about hatred. It is about survival and justice. We are not the invaders. We are the rightful heirs of this galaxy. Her message was received with a mixture of reverence and unease. The Humari were back, but whether as liberators or conquerors remained to be seen. As the Armada prepared to move toward the Lyra cluster, Ray stood once more on the bridge, staring out at the stars. The galaxy had changed, but the fire within, humanity burned brighter than ever. We will remind them why the Humari are more than myth, she vowed. The Lyra cluster was a sprawling nebula of glowing gas and fragmented asteroids, a natural fortress for the Concord's refueling bases and fleet staging grounds. For months, it had been one of the few regions where the Concorde still held relative control. Now, it was about to become the crucible where the galaxy's fate would be tested. Commander Rei Nakamura stood on the bridge of the tsunami, her eyes fixed on the swirling nebula clouds. The human armada had emerged from stealth. Weapons systems, primed, engines humming with lethal readiness. The fleet was tight, disciplined, like a predator circling its prey. Enemy fleet detected, reported the tactical officer. Conquered forces are assembling in Sector 7 Gamma. They're preparing to defend the refueling station. Ray's expression was unreadable. Initiate Phase 1. Stealth skimmers, deploy around their perimeter. Disable their long-range sensors. We strike fast and vanish. In the heart of the Concorde's fleet, Admiral Gir gripped the armrest of his command chair as the warning lights blinked across the bridge of the battle cruiser Vraxis. The Concorde's fleets had been pushed back before, but never like this. This was different. The enemy was smarter, faster, more ruthless. Deploy interceptors, he ordered. Target the black ships first. We must break their formation. Below, decks, Captain Rin Taller coordinated with fighter squadrons. The battle was imminent and every second counted. As the two forces converged amid the shimmering gas clouds of the nebula, silence broke into a storm of fire and fury. Black human skimmers darted through asteroid belts, their plasma disruptors cutting communications and sensor arrays on Concorde vessels. Explosions blossomed like deadly flowers, sending ships tumbling into the void. Ray's flagship moved with deadly grace. Quantum torpedoes blinked across the void, striking the Vraxis and shattering its forward shields. Fires erupted, and the mighty battlecruiser lurched, its engines faltering. Commander, Haru Masaki reported urgently. We have a squadron of Concorde fighters closing fast. They're targeting our skimmers. Ray nodded sharply. Deploy countermeasures, let them come. Fighter pilots on both sides clashed in deadly dogfights, weaving through gas clouds and debris. Rin, piloting her escort ship Hawkeye, felt the pressure in every moment. Missiles streaking past, tracer fire lighting up the void. Target the command ships. She barked into comms. If we take out their leadership, the rest will scatter. Her wingmate, a grizzled veteran named Kess, replied, Copy that, but those black ships are ghosts. No transit signatures, no predictable patterns. In the heat of battle, Tsunami's quantum shields flickered under relentless fire. Ray's fingers danced over the control panel as she directed her fleet, but the Concorde was adapting quickly. They had no choice but to commit to a full frontal assault. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the Tsunami's starboard side. Warning sirens blared. Ray steadied herself. Damage report, she demanded. Shields down to 40%. Hull integrity stable. Enemy torpedo impact on the aft thrusters, came the response. Ray's jaw tightened. Divert power to engines. We'll outmaneuver them. The battle raged on for hours, both fleets taking heavy losses. The nebula's gas and debris provided cover but also dangers. Ships lost to sudden gravity surges and unexpected plasma storms. As the smoke of battle cleared, the Concorde fleet began an organized retreat, battered but alive. The human Armada held its ground, having achieved its objective, disabling the refueling stations and scattering the Concorde's forces. Back on the Vraxis, Admiral Gier's voice was grim as he addressed the surviving officers. Today we faced a force we barely understand. We will adapt, we will learn, and we will fight back harder. Nearby, Rin leaned against a bulkhead, exhaustion creeping into her bones. They're not just fighting for territory, she said, quietly. They're fighting to reclaim a lost legacy, and they will not stop. In the enemy fleet's command chamber, Rei Nakamura looked out at the battered Concorde ships retreating into the stars. The victory was costly, but it was a statement. We are back, she said softly. And we will be heard. Her words echoed through the fleet, a promise of the storm yet to come. The halls of the Galactic Concorde's High Council on Luxor 4 thrummed with tension. The recent loss at the Lyra cluster was still fresh, a bitter wound festering beneath the polished surfaces of the ornate chamber. Council members debated fiercely, voices rising and falling like storm-tossed waves. Councillor Hellman paced the floor, slamming a fist against the grand table. We cannot continue to flail. The Humari are not a myth. They are here, and they are tearing through our borders as if we were nothing. Opposite him, Councillor Yelana raised a hand for silence. Helmin, escalating the war blindly will only bring ruin. We must consider negotiations, open channels, seek common ground before this devolves into total annihilation. Varric stood quietly to the side, absorbing every word. He had warned of this inevitability months ago, but to hear the council wrestle with it was another matter entirely. The Humari, humans, were more than ghosts of legend now. They were a storm reshaping the galaxy's future. Meanwhile, aboard the battered flagship Aurelia's Shadow, Rin Talar reviewed intercepted transmissions from the Humari fleet. Among the steady stream of battle communiques, there was a new thread, encrypted, but repeated frequently, a possible attempt at diplomatic contact. She brought the data to Admiral Gier. There's a message hidden here, she explained. They're offering terms, it's vague, but it's there. Gier frowned. After the destruction we've seen, why now? Maybe they want to avoid endless war, Rin suggested cautiously. Or maybe it's a ruse. Far across the void, Commander Rei Nakamura prepared her own counsel for what lay ahead. She understood the war was not just fought on battlefields but in minds and hearts. The Humari had survived exile, but they knew the cost of endless conflict. We strike because we must, Rei told her officers. But we must also show strength in negotiation. We have a message to send, not only with our weapons, but with our words. Lieutenant Haru Masaki nodded. Our people are divided, Commander. Some want peace, others want total reclamation. It's a fragile balance. Rei's gaze was steely. Then we hold that balance, until the galaxy sees us not as myths, but as the rightful heirs. Back on Luxor 4, a special envoy was formed, Varric, appointed to lead the first official talks with the humans. His reputation as a scholar and diplomat gave him a rare advantage. He believed the Humari could be reasoned with, if only the council had the courage. As Varric's ship crossed into the Perseid fringe, the void seemed emptier, the silence heavier. The black ships waited, silent and watchful. Upon docking at the human fleet's forward station, Varric was escorted into the tsunami. The interior was stark but functional, illuminated by soft blue light. Ray greeted him with a measured nod. "Scholar, Varric," she said. "You bring the voice of the Concord. We are listening." The talks began cautiously, the air thick with mistrust and history. "We seek understanding," Varric opened. "Your people were thought lost. Your return has shaken the foundations of the Concord. But there is still time. Time for peace." Ray's eyes never wavered. "Peace is not given, it is earned. Your people pushed us into exile. They erased our history. We are here to reclaim, yes, but not to repeat the sins of the past." The dialogue was tense but honest. Each side laid bare its fears and grievances. Varric spoke of coexistence, of rebuilding trust. Ray spoke of survival, of justice, of the right to return home. Outside the conference chamber, whispers spread through both fleets. Some viewed the talks as hopeful steps toward peace. Others saw them as weakness or betrayal. Captain Soren Hale, leader of the Restorers faction within the Humari, met secretly with Varric's aides. "This is our chance," he said. "If we can build bridges now, we can save countless lives." But not everyone shared his optimism. Within Ray's council, hardliners warned that peace talks would only delay the inevitable clash. Back on Luxor 4, Councillor Hellman watched the unfolding diplomacy with suspicion. "This scholar Varric is naive," he told a gathering of influential leaders. "The Humari will use these talks to buy time, to rebuild their strength. We must prepare for total war." Others urged patience, reminding the council that war had already cost too much. As days turned into weeks, the fragile dialogue continued. In the cold expanse of space, old grudges slowly gave way to cautious hope. But beneath the surface, shadows stirred. Saboteurs struck at supply lines. Rogue factions within the Concord launched attacks against human outposts. In retaliation, Humari, covert teams sabotaged Concord technology. The fragile peace was fragile indeed. In her quarters, Rei Nakamura stared out at the stars beyond the tsunami's viewport. "This is only the beginning," she murmured. "The galaxy will remember the Humari not as myths but as the flame that refused to die." The uneasy calm that had settled over the Perseid fringe was shattered in the dead of night. A blaring alarm echoed through the corridors of the tsunami. Commander Rei Nakamura was roused instantly, her senses sharpening. Security breaches were a rarity on a ship fortified with layers of bio-neural encryption and drone sentries, but when they happened, they were catastrophic. "Report," she demanded, slipping into her tactical armor. Lieutenant Haru Masaki's voice crackled over, the calm tense and grim. "Intrusion detected in engineering. Saboteurs have infiltrated the fuel core sector. Damage control teams are mobilizing, but the detonation sequence has been triggered." Ray's heart sank. The war they sought to temper with diplomacy was slipping into chaos. On Luxor 4, Varric paced anxiously in the council chambers. His efforts to broker peace with the Humari had made progress, but whispers of sabotage within conquered lines were growing louder. Supply depots had been hit by explosives, communication relays compromised. "Sabotage within our ranks threatens to unravel everything," Varric warned. "We must find those responsible before we lose control." Councillor Helmine sneered. "There are no traitors, only the enemy hiding in plain sight. We should respond with overwhelming force." Varric shook his head. "Violence breeds violence. If we destroy what little trust we have, there will be nothing left to save." Back aboard the tsunami, Ray strode through the engineering bay, now a chaos of sparks and twisted metal. Her best engineers worked feverishly to stabilize the core before it detonated and ripped the ship apart. "Find the saboteurs," she ordered. "I want every camera, every sensor replayed." Within minutes, security footage revealed shadowy figures moving stealthily through the ship's lower decks, morphs using cloaking tech to evade detection. The attackers were professional, precise, and chillingly familiar. Enemy operatives, Haru said, voice tight. They're not just fighters, they're spies. On the other side of the Perseid fringe, Rin Talar monitored Concord fleet movements. Reports of sabotage were mounting. Weapons caches destroyed, pilot logs erased, vital star charts corrupted. She clenched her fists. This isn't just war anymore. It's sabotage, terrorism. Her communications officer relayed an urgent message. Captain, we have incoming encrypted transmissions. They claim responsibility for the attacks. Signed, the Shadow Hand. Rin's eyes narrowed. The Shadow Hand was an infamous mercenary group rumored to be manipulating the conflict from the shadows, fueling hatred, chaos, and distrust. Meanwhile, aboard the Tsunami, Ray's council convened in the war room. We need to find the Shadow Hand's base of operations, Ray said. If we root out their network, we can stop these attacks. Haru activated a star map, highlighting suspected locations. We believe they're embedded in both Concord and Humari territories, posing as rebels, extremists, and even some officials. Ray's voice dropped. They want this war to destroy us all. Underneath the polished halls of Luxor 4, secret meetings were held. Council members, mercenaries, and rogue agents whispered plans of betrayal. Varric's warnings went unheeded by some, who saw the chaos as an opportunity. Councillor Hellman met with an anonymous envoy cloaked in shadow. The Humari talks are a trap, Hellman growled. We will use the Shadow Hand to strike deep within, their fleet. Then we will crush them utterly, the envoy smiled coldly. The shadows are patient, Counselor. The flame will burn out, one spark at a time. On the Tsunami, Ray received a message from an unknown source. Coordinates to a hidden Shadow Hand base near a dead star. Trust no one but yourself, the message concluded. Ray turned to Haru. Prepare a strike team. We take the fight to them. The tension on the bridge was palpable. Every officer knew the risks. The deeper they went into this web of deceit, the closer they came to the edge of disaster. As the strike team launched from the Tsunami in sleek stealth shuttles, the Concord fleet readied their own hunt for the Shadow Hand. The galaxy's fragile peace hung in the balance. In the cold void between stars, ancient grudges and new betrayals converged, and somewhere in the darkness, the Shadow Hand waited, ready to ignite the spark that could consume them all. The cold silence of space was shattered by the sudden flare of plasma fire and exploding hulls. The Tsunami's strike team had found the Shadow Hand's hidden fortress orbiting a dead, barren star, a maze of derelict ships and rusting space stations repurposed as a pirate haven. Commander Rei Nakamura led from the front, her heart pounding, but her mind razor-sharp. The stakes were no longer just survival. This was the moment to prove humanity was no myth. They were a force to be reckoned with. Inside the crumbling complex, shadows moved like ghosts. The Shadow Hand mercenaries fought fiercely, their tactics brutal and ruthless. Ray's team pressed forward, clearing corridors and disabling traps. But every step was a struggle. Keep moving, Ray urged. We need to reach the Central Command. Elsewhere in the Concord Fleet's command bridge, Admiral Gier watched as his intelligence officers decrypted intercepted communications. The Shadow Hand is coordinating attacks to spark full-scale war between our factions, a technician reported. If they succeed, neither side will survive the chaos. Gier's eyes narrowed. Then we must end this. Contact the Humari leadership. Request a joint operation. Back on the Tsunami, Ray reached the command center just as the enemy's leader, a ruthless mercenary known only as Korin, activated a self-destruct sequence. No, Ray shouted, rushing to override the system. Her fingers flew over the console, but the countdown continued, seconds ticking down like the beating of a war drum. With a final surge, Ray cracked the override. The explosion was contained, but the base was left in ruins. Among the wreckage, Ray found data caches revealing the Shadow Hand's true goal, to keep the galaxy divided, profiting from endless conflict. In orbit above, The Concord and Humari fleets coordinated a surprise strike on remaining Shadowhand strongholds, their forces united by the shared threat. As the battle raged, a fragile alliance formed, not born of trust but necessity. Days later, at a summit aboard the neutral station, Harmony, Ray, and Admiral Gir stood side by side before a gathering of representatives. "The Humari are no longer myths," Ray declared. "We are here to reclaim our place not as conquerors, but as partners." Gir nodded. "The Conquered has made mistakes. We see now that coexistence is the only path forward." Captain Soren Hale approached Ray privately. "This is only the beginning. We must build on this fragile peace." Ray smiled grimly. "The galaxy remembers myths, Soren. But legends? Legends endure." Outside the station's viewport, stars shone bright, signaling a new dawn. The myth of humanity had become legend, and the galaxy's future was theirs to write.